Hello, everyone. Charles Coleman here, presenting to you Leonard Bernstein's Mass, my least favorite recording leading to my most favorite recording. I truly adore this work. It is probably Leonard Bernstein's most personal piece. There's a mashup of all sorts of genres utilized in a classical idiom. It was originally commissioned by Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis for the opening of the Kennedy Center in 1971, commissioned in honor of John F. Kennedy, our former president, whom Bernstein knew very well. This piece is a resetting of the traditional Catholic Mass with a subtext provided with lyrics by Stephen Schwartz and Paul Simon. And in this work, our lead character is known as the celebrant, the man who's trying to lead this Mass service, but throughout he is constantly interrupted by a group known as the street people who question the relevance of God while the world seems to be falling apart. And this exchange goes on until the street people are attempting to tear the whole place apart, and the celebrant has this amazing meltdown, about 15 or so minutes worth, a la Benjamin Britten's Peter Grimes or something like that. And he throws this chalice of red wine, aka the blood of Christ, throws it to the ground and has this whole monologue about how the blood seems brown, and he goes nuts. And ultimately he calms down, moves off, and the whole crowd is in shock, feeling a little guilty of what they put through this man. And then everyone calms down and tries to resume making the best of life and trying to figure out how to go on. It's a great piece. Now, that's just a simple way of putting it, but when you include this amazing score, it's quite different. This piece was initially performed in 1971 to a lot of bad reviews. I think the critic Harold Schoenberg said it was vulgar and cheap and all sorts of stuff, and I don't think it's been recorded for nearly 40 years until some recordings came out in 2009, and then subsequently I think another 3-4 recordings of it came out in the last 10-15 years. There are, I believe, 6 commercial recordings of Bernstein's Mass, and I have heard all of them. So here is my list from least favorite to most favorite. Number 6, Yannick Nézet-Séguin and the Philadelphia Orchestra, recorded on Deutsche Grammophon. The interpretation is very good. It's a very devoted performances from all the forces, the singers, the chorus, and orchestra. Of course, it's the Philadelphia Orchestra. You can't get better than that. The problem is the sonics. I don't know this for a fact, but it sounds to me that this was recorded. You know, in your average concert hall, there's always these 1 or 2 microphones that are hanging from the ceiling in the audience from above, aiming at the stage, and probably used primarily for the purpose of documenting these performances, which I'm going to guess that was the case with this performance. And Deutsche Grammophon felt that since this was recorded in 2018, the year of the 100th birthday of Leonard Bernstein, that they should probably release it because it's an overall good performance, and they were thinking that maybe if they could master the sound in some way, they would sound like a professional recording. But it sounds like an amazing bootleg recording, but a very poor commercial recording. And because of these not so great sonics, you hear weird things. The organ, it doesn't sound to be in sync with the orchestra. Maybe on the stage they were in sync, but because the microphone sounds so distant that you hear it sounds like the organ is somewhat behind the rest of the orchestra. And when you hear the fast sections, it just sounds, just not together. Even though you can hear the dedication from all the performers involved, Yannick Nézet-Séguin is a wonderful conductor. He's a gift to the Metropolitan Opera and to the Philadelphia Orchestra, who's done many great works. Unfortunately, he is misrepresented by the sonics of this recording, especially the singer Kevin Wortman playing the celebrant, who does a wonderful job here. I'm not sure he's definitely more of a tenor and maybe not the voice type that Bernstein had in mind, but he does a very dedicated performance and tries to give it his all. Unfortunately, he and Séguin and the Philadelphia Orchestra are misrepresented by the sonics, and that's why I have it to be my least favorite of all the performances. My 5th favorite performance, Kent Nagano and the Deutsche Symphony Orchestra Berlin. on the Harmonia Mundi record label. This was also a live performance, but it was a much better sonically recorded performance. I just have a little problem with how it is performed. Nagano is a great conductor, but in a lot of his performances, he has a holdback of restraining the dynamics of the orchestra and players. This is done often by other conductors, but in this performance, I think it's a little too much. And for me, the point of this work is that there is to be no restraint. Or if you're going to do it, you got to be more selective in order to make that work. The celebrant is the great tenor Jerry Hadley. I knew him when I was a kid, when I sang in the New York City Opera Children's Chorus. We did La Boheme. He and I would, as when I was a kid, he was a sweet, sweet man to me, and we would talk music. Delightful human being, and he was a wonderful tenor, but I think he's miscast in this role as the celebrant. It was, again, like the Philadelphia recording, I think it was a bit of a miscast. This role of the celebrant was intended for a high baritone, at least range-wise. Color-wise, that's up for interpretation. But I feel that this performance overall is well performed, but not interpretively a little more restrained than it should be. My fourth favorite performance of Leonard Bernstein's Mass, Dennis Russell Davies and the Vienna Radio Symphony Orchestra on the Capriccio record label. This interpretation seems to fit more for me. Definitely a more expressive performance. The sound is very good, devoted soloists and devoted chorus, and the rhythm section is really, really good. The bass, guitars, and drums. They know how to improvise a little bit here and there, which fits in context with this piece, especially the drummer. He does very amazing fill-ins. And the sonics of the way they do it. There's the section early on in the Mass where you hear dum, do-do-dum, and the guitar is kind of following like a beat behind, and they're kind of going off each other. In this performance of Dennis Russell Davies, the sonics are left and right, and you're hearing mea culpa, May, and so on like that with the chorus. It's beautifully done, maybe the best performance of that interpretation. The celebrant soloist is a guy named Wojtek Dík. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. A very expressive performer from the Czech Republic. His voice kind of annoys me. You know, he tends to slurp his notes. You know, blessed be the Lord that visits him. Boy, that sounded bad. But anyway, I don't like his style of performing it. However, when we get to the big meltdown monologue, he definitely gives it his all, as much as he can. He even improvises a little bit, which I think is very good. And I think Leonard Bernstein would have thought that was very interesting. He improvises spots, just showing even more of the madness of it all. Sometimes he does some weird falsetto moments, Bonham, and stuff like that, which I didn't think worked. But generally speaking, a decent performance of this overall work by Dennis Russell Davies. Now we get to my third favorite recording of Leonard Bernstein's Mass, Marin Alsop and the Baltimore Symphony Orchestra on the Naxos label. A lot of critics feel that this is the best recording of the Mass ever. It's really, really good, but I have a few criticisms. First, what I love about this recording, Jubilant Sykes, an amazing baritone. It's as if he was born to play this role. Beautiful voice and really expressive, not afraid to let himself go vocally. Even if it cracks here and there, it doesn't matter. It fits the context of the character that he's playing, especially in the meltdown that he performs. He is a wonderful performer and just serves this recording very well. Another great thing about this recording, the sonics. This is the best sonically recorded performance ever. Everything is perfect. It just sounds amazing. It just fills your ears with a nice surround feel to it. And it's just truly an amazing recording. And the Baltimore Symphony is a wonderful orchestra too. So why don't I put it at my number one spot like all the other critics and listeners? One of my issues is the chorus, the Morgan State University Choir. I don't care for the sound of that group. Perhaps when they do Mozart or Bach masses or pieces like that, that's one thing. But in this piece, there's just something about their sound that just sounds so rigid, you know. De profundis clamavi, clamavi. Maybe in the context of the piece it might work. I just don't like their sound that much, at least only in this piece. Maybe in other works it would work better. Another issue I have is with regard to the street singers in this recording by Marin Alsop. They're good singers. They're very, very good and well-trained, but they are all opera singers in their own rigid way of interpreting this piece. The whole point of this piece is that you have to let yourself go, and they just don't do that. And my only other issue with this recording is the interpretation by Marin Alsop, a wonderful conductor, avid promoter of living composers like me, and I just love what she does for it. She's a fantastic conductor. Her recordings of Bernstein Symphonies No. 1 and 2 and the concert version of On the Waterfront are probably the best ever. But I just don't agree with how she interprets this piece. I feel that it's a very tightly welded performance. Not too slow, not too fast, not too loud, not too soft. Which is probably what she's going for. It's funny because she was a pupil of Leonard Bernstein's, who was, of course, a very extreme in-your-face conductor, and Marin Alsop is a little bit more calmer. I guess that's one way. It's great, and it works in many other pieces, as I mentioned, the other Bernstein works. I think it's a lot more compact. I find this performance a very safe performance. And Leonard Bernstein's Mass is anything but safe, especially in the Dona Nobis Pacem section where the street singers are tearing everything apart and the orchestra is playing everything correctly, as is the singers, but they're not going nuts, and which I think is what they're supposed to be doing. You know, players improvising in the orchestra, and even the singers. Again, the street singers sound to me like very classically trained singers, that they don't do a lot. They try to do a little bit of a, you can hear one or two sopranos doing these solos, trying to do some kind of jazz riff or something, but they don't go for it. It is the most restrained performance of that section ever. And just in general, I think this is the most welded performance of this, and I don't think the piece is supposed to be welded. But despite those quibbles, it's a very good performance. My number 2 favorite recording of Leonard Bernstein's Mass, Leonard Bernstein's own recording of this work. What can you say? Leonard Bernstein, arguably the greatest musician from America. This performance has all the stops. I mean, after all, it's the composer conducting it. I found it very weird the way it was sonically recorded. Not bad, but weird. Kind of similar to what George Martin and the Beatles did in their last recordings as the Beatles. When a different ensemble in this piece was recorded, it was given a different sonic type atmosphere, kind of an oral version of stage lighting, which I guess in this piece works very well. Not that I criticize that, but I found myself wishing for other elements to stick out more, but that's just, again, my thought. But, you know, in terms of interpretation, it's the composer conducting his own piece. And he obviously did a great job with that, along with the great Alan Titus playing the role of the celebrant. A very traditional baritone, but he wasn't afraid to let himself go and let the voice, not only let the voice crack, but let it strain, because there's such a strain on the celebrant when he has his meltdown at the end of the work. He just obviously did it. I think he just graduated from Juilliard when he did this work, and he just did a wonderful job. This is the recording, of course, that all of us grew up on. My Aunt Mary Coleman sent me this as a birthday present when it was a record, and I've been in love with this piece ever since. It's truly one of the greatest recordings ever made in general. And now we get to my number 1 favorite recording of Leonard Bernstein's Mass, and some of you might hate me for this, Kristjan Järvi and the Tonkünstler Orchestra on the Chandos record label. This is a very controversial recording. People either love this recording or they absolutely hate it. It is the most balls-to-the-wall performance you're going to get of this piece. On Gramophone magazine, I think this was considered the editor's choice of May of 2009 when this recording came out. Very unlike Marin Alsop's recording in that, you know, as I said, Marin Alsop's recording was much more compact and welded. This performance by Kristjan Järvi is not welded at all. It goes for the extremes, much like Bernstein's own interpretation, and everyone really goes for it here. They just blast it away. In the whole section in the Dona Nobis, when they're trying to tear it apart, it just goes crazy. It is the craziest performance of that. And I think it great. Some people think it's too crazy. Not for me. It works in context. The soloist, Randall Scarlatta, is a wonderful dramatic baritone. Not sure if he was the type of voice Bernstein wanted, but it worked for me perfectly. He's got all the notes, and he's not afraid to let himself go, much like how Alan Titus did it. He does a wonderful job. The street singers, soloists, for the most part, are from Vienna, and even with their thick Austrian accent, they still do a great job. For the most part, there's some over-interpretations here and there, but I think it works in context with what Kristjan Järvi was going for. I've worked with Kristjan Järvi a few times, and he's always like that. He likes to go for a balls-to-the-wall interpretation of anything he does. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It works here in this performance. In the meditation, where we hear the basses play the De Profundis thing, da 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 dee dee, do 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 do. They really dig for it. As I said, in Marin Alsop's performance, it's very different. They play that section very, very well, but not very, very in your face like Kristjan Järvi's performance. I may change my mind about how I feel about this recording or any of the other recordings, but this is my personal favorite recording. Again, you either love it or hate it. I love it. So those are my 2 cents. Love to hear what you think. If you disagree, please be kind, but give me what you want to tell me. Thank you very much. Until the next one.